185 kilometers. That is all that separates the Philippines' northern tip from Taiwan. And in 2025, that tiny stretch of water has destroyed Beijing's clean war plan. For years, China's generals imagined a fast strike across the strait. Quick, brutal, decisive, but geography has betrayed them. The Philippines now stands in the way. The United States operates from 9 bases across the islands. Japan has entered under a brand new security pact. And Manila itself has armed Luzon with BrahMos missiles and US Typhoon launchers, each aimed squarely at China's escape routes. For decades, Filipinos felt like pawns, pushed around, ignored, humiliated at places like Scarborough Shoal. But today, those same islands are no longer weak points. They are the wall that could decide Taiwan's survival. Every coastline has teeth, every base is a tripwire, and every launch system threatens to bleed China before it can even move. The stakes are brutal. Beijing cannot advance without colliding with the Philippines, and every clash risks igniting America, Japan, and Australia at once. This is not theory. These deployments are already live, and this is the story of how the Philippines crushed China's Taiwan plan before it could even begin. In 1991, the Philippines told America to leave. The great bases at Clark and Subic, symbols of empire for almost a century, were shut down. It felt like a proud break. A young democracy wanted its independence. The US Air Force and Navy packed their gear and sailed away. But the story did not end there. The South China Sea grew tense. China moved on to reefs. Filipino fishermen were chased, and Manila began to see the cost of standing alone. By 1999, the Visiting Forces Agreement was signed. It allowed US soldiers to return, not as permanent occupiers, but as rotational partners. By 2014, a deeper step was taken. The Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement, EDCA, was born. It gave the US access to Philippine bases again, this time to preposition supplies, to build facilities in northern Luzon, to prepare for a crisis before it even began. In 2016, the Philippine Supreme Court upheld EDCA. What once was fragile was now law. The emotional shift was striking. A country that once said no was now turning its soil into the front line of Asia's next great contest. The US would not rebuild giant fortresses like before. Instead, it would spread forces, rotate troops, and hide firepower in plain sight. The Philippines had moved from eviction to return, and this return was not about past empire. It was about survival. The conflict sharpened. China's expansion pressed harder. The Philippines responded by opening the door wider to America. The cycle was complete. Rejection turned into alliance. But even this was not the final card, because geography itself was about to become the deadliest weapon of all. Every Chinese war plan has one choke point, the Bashi Channel. It is the narrow strait between Luzon and Taiwan. Every submarine, every warship, every aircraft leaving the South China Sea must pass through it. There is no other way out. And in 2023, the Philippines and its allies turned this gap into a trap. Under the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement, EDCA, the number of US access sites jumped from 5 to 9. New hubs rose in Lalo, Camilo Osias, and Isabela in northern Luzon. Further south, Balabac guarded the approach to the Spratlys. These were not abstract dots on a map. They were concrete, radar, fuel, and runways, placed exactly where China least wanted them. From Luzon's northern edge, Allied aircraft could watch every Chinese move. From Balabac, they could cover the sea lanes pushing toward Palawan. The emotional shift was heavy. For decades, every Chinese ship sailing north assumed freedom of movement. Now, every lane out of the South China Sea was under Allied crosshairs. Filipino soldiers who once felt ignored now stood at the very hinge of Asia. The conflict sharpened. China knew its fleet could not surge into the Pacific without passing through kill zones. And the Philippines had made sure those kill zones were wired with American power. Every meter north was shadowed. Every exit lane was trapped. This was geography turned into a weapon. And it was not just a military fact, it was becoming a legal one too. Because after the bases and the missiles came something just as powerful. Law itself would set the next line Beijing could not cross. Before the missiles came the law. In 2016, the Permanent Court of Arbitration in The Hague delivered a ruling that shocked Beijing. China's 9-line was declared illegal. The The reefs inside 200 nautical miles of Palawan were confirmed as part of the Philippines' exclusive zone. For the first time, Manila had law as a shield. But that was only the beginning. By 2024, the Philippines went further. 2 new laws were passed, the Maritime Zones Act and the Archipelagic Sea Lanes Act. These laws did not just describe maps, they drew hard lines. They declared which waters belonged to the Philippines, and they set the exact lanes foreign ships could use if they wanted to cross. In June 2024, Manila filed an extended continental shelf claim, stretching legal rights even further into the South China Sea. For China, this was a nightmare. Every corridor it needed for a Taiwan encirclement, every supply line through the Luzon Strait or West Philippine Sea, was now boxed in by Philippine law. The emotional weight was massive. A nation once humiliated at Scarborough Shoal in 2012, forced to retreat while China stayed, was now writing the rulebook for the entire sea. This was lawfare reloaded, the conflict sharpened. China had guns and ships, but the Philippines now had the world's courts, its allies backing, and a legal map Beijing could not erase. Still, law alone cannot stop a warship. Paper cannot block a ramming hull, and signatures cannot stop missiles from flying. The Philippines had built its legal wall, but the next step was steel, because only missiles could finish what the laws began. By 2024, the Philippines no longer relied only on law. Steel arrived. Missiles took positions on the islands. The United States forward deployed a Typhoon battery, a system able to fire both cruise and ballistic missiles. It was planted inside Philippine soil. At the same time, Manila inducted its first BrahMos coastal defense batteries. One set came in 2024, another in 2025. Each missile could fly at 3,000 kilometers per hour, strike beyond 300 kilometers, and punch through the hull of a warship before defenses could react. The net was tightening. Then came Balikatan 2025, the biggest joint exercise in Philippine history. For the first time, U.S. Marines staged NMESIS launchers in Batanes, the tiny islands just south of Taiwan. From there, Allied missiles could cover the Bashi Channel, the unavoidable corridor every Chinese ship must cross. For captains in the PLA Navy, the meaning was brutal. Every transit now felt like a suicide run. Every lane was crosshaired by Allied missiles. Every exit from the South China Sea risked annihilation. The emotional shift was stark. Filipino soldiers once standing with rifles on reefs now commanded weapons that could kill destroyers and carriers before they even fired. The conflict sharpened. China's swarms of cutters and gray hull intimidation met a wall of firepower wired into Allied drills. The Philippines had not just drawn lines on a map, it had armed them. And the net around China's fleet grew tighter with every deployment. But Manila was not alone, because the Allies were now rallying, ready to lock the grid from all directions. By 2024, the Philippines was no longer standing alone. Allies began to weave a net around the islands. That year, a historic summit was held in Washington, the U.S.-Japan-Philippines Leaders Meeting. It was more than talk. It was the start of constant action at sea. Large-scale joint patrols resumed. U.S. destroyers, Japanese frigates, Australian warships, and Philippine cutters moved together through contested waters. By 2025, these patrols had become routine. At least 4 times a month, 4 nations sailed side by side. The message was unmistakable. An attack on one could drag in all. For Filipino fishermen, the change was emotional. For decades, they had been chased, harassed, and left without cover. Now, when they left shore, they sailed under 4 flags. American, Japanese, Australian, Filipino. Each patrol was more than presence. It was protection. It was proof that the South China Sea was no longer China's alone. The conflict sharpened. China's intimidation, the rammings, the lasers, the water cannons, met the quiet weight of Allied steel moving beside local boats. Every shadowing cutter now risked facing not just a Filipino patrol, but an Allied task force. The Philippines had woven itself into something bigger, a shield no single nation could break. And yet, even this was not the peak. Because in 2025, one ally crossed a line thought impossible. Japan, a nation once seen only as a past invader, stepped forward to anchor Manila's defense in a way no one expected. In 2025, history came full circle. The Reciprocal Access Agreement between Manila and Tokyo was ratified in September. For the first time in modern history, Japanese troops could legally deploy on Philippine soil, not as invaders, not as occupiers, but as partners. Alongside troops came radar systems, logistics hubs, and joint drills. Japan, once feared for its wartime invasion, was now anchoring the defense of the very islands it had once attacked. The emotional weight was staggering. Older generations remembered the scars of war. Younger ones now saw protection written in Japanese uniforms standing beside Filipinos. A former occupier had become a shield. For the Philippines, this was more than military strength. It was redemption written in alliances. It was proof that enemies could become defenders.